Welcome to PM Express Business Edition. The tax on electronic transfers has finally taken off after some challenges in getting Parliament approval, the public education, and even now some legal issues that government has to clear. But with this situation on the ground, when it comes to, or what is the situation on the ground, when it comes to those firms and institutions that are actually helping the Ghana Revenue Authority to collect these taxes, that is the telcos and the commercial banks. We'll be trying to get some understanding as we look at the E-Levy and implementation challenges, as I'll be engaging Dr. Ken Ashigbe. He's Chief Executive of the Ghana Chamber of Telecommunications, and also John Ewua, his Chief Executive of the Ghana Association of Bankers. These two critical persons getting some understanding on E-Levy and post-implementation, how things are faring so far. All these issues wrapped up on PM Express Business Edition. Be right back after this break. Welcome back to PM Express Business Edition as we talk about the tax on electronic transfers and the challenges or the issues that are arising right now. And obviously, you can have this discussion without engaging the critical sectors in this industry, apart from the Ghana Revenue Authority, the telcos, the commercial banks, and the fintechs. And I'm glad to have Dr. Ken Ashigbe with me in studio. And Doc, thank you so much. And also via Zoom, I have John Ewua, he's Chief Executive of the Ghana Bank Association. And John, I thank you so much for your time. I caught up a lot of things, but you made time for us. Ken, I mean, how are you doing? How are things?
Well, thank you very much, and good evening, John. But you see, when I come into this, it's not the telcos. I'm coming with the EMIs. My members, the EMIs, they are into the mobile money. Okay. So the telcos are asleep on this one. Oh, okay. This one is more the electronic money issuer. Yes. So MTN Mobile Money Limited, Vodafone Cash, Airtel Go Money, they are the people playing this place with G Money and the rest.
Thanks for the education. And Mr. Ewua, who are you also representing apart from the commercial banks? Mr. Ewua, if you can hear me, I'm trying to get back to you about who are you representing? The commercial banks, of course, right?
Yeah, all the commercial banks together with the ARB Apex Bank and the rural and community banks here.
But how are things, by the way, how are things for you at your end? Interesting year last year. We've seen the financials, first quarter, strong results as well.
At the banks, the central bank governor has said it many times that the banks to the right capital levels are able to convert the capital to generate, shareholder returns. And in addition to that, they are also doing quite a lot for community and the community engagement services as well. So once you have the right capital levels, your liquidity is in the right place, your capital equity and all the other ratios are taken in the right direction, and you are also doing your financial intermediation, giving the necessary financial assistance to the business community, individuals and households. The results can only be one thing, that is profitability, if you do it right.
Let me come in studio and speak to engineer Dr. Ken Ashigbe, and you're presenting the EMIs. Thanks for the education as well. I mean, it has been Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, tough 4 days. Was it expected or...
I think it was even be proud that John will tell you that there was a lot of engagement, flurry of activities even before.
Fill us in, because we all thought that GRA woke up one morning, said that we are going ahead and it's going to happen. Can you fill us in a little bit?
What had happened is that when the minister went to Parliament and announced the policy, when he was reading the budget, we started engagement with GRA to prepare for when Parliament finally passes the bill into an act and the President assents it. So there was quite a lot of activity that happened. So by the 31st of January, the Commissioner General issued a letter asking that we go on a phased approach. Bear in mind that for us, the EMIs, then SIM registration of our parent companies were going on. So it was going to end on the 31st of July. So the plan was that the first phase was to coincide with that particular one. And for John and the banks, we were looking at July, when the Bank of Ghana had issued a directive as to when they were also supposed to be using the Ghana cards. So what our members had left that meeting with was the fact that we're going to work on the phase one, which was without a connection to the common platform. And so all the various developments have been done, tests had been done, and we're ready for that. But when finally the bill was passed into law and was assented by the president, we had a meeting with the Minister for Finance, who then announced to us that we're no more going to go with a phased approach, but we're going to go the full hog, which meant a connection to the common platform. And all of that was supposed to take about a month. But this is a really major project. You know, the number of use cases are so many, the number of customers are so many, the number of charging entities, and you're dealing with money as well. So in terms of the testing, and so all our members dedicated a lot of resources to it to try and get our systems ready to be able to go. But getting close to the time, we really realized that it was going to be almost impossible to get ready, to be able to test, you know, to assure customers that everything was going to go seamless. So we had to write to the Minister for Finance, you know, to petition that we wanted to ensure that customers had a seamless, you know, user experience when we went live on 1st of May. So we believe that we should start with the on-net, where we did not need to connect to the common platform before you know, you make any transaction. So when we spoke with the minister, with GRA also in attendance, it was agreed to this modified phased approach, which meant that now the EMIs, the banks, the fintechs, all of us in charging the E-Levy, we restricted ourselves to what happened on our networks without necessarily going out. So for us, the EMIs, we call that the on-net transactions. So you do all transactions on net, but you also charged off net as well. And so because that decision was also taken almost in the last minute, you know, it really took a lot of doing to prepare what you had already prepared, but you had left and started working towards the common platform and go back to that. And so come Sunday, you know, I believe that for this massive nature of this project, we started very well. You know, there were some challenges, as you would expect with any new project. But the good thing is that most of them have been fixed. Those that are still being worked on are things that we know when they are going to be fixed. Typical example is the fact that for one of the networks, because they had a cap for their charges, when it came to the levies as well, the law does not allow capping. They were still capping it. So what it resulted in is that if anybody was transferring money on that particular network, and you went above, you know, the cap, then the taxes were not added up. So it means in that particular case, then that network, that EMI had to quickly find a way of resolving that, but it had to bear the cost of all the taxes that currently were being undercharged. You know, so that also happened. And then there were situations where, you know, for some of the EMIs, airtime, for example, that was not supposed to be taxed, was being taxed when they started it. They had to rectify it. For some of them, it was the communication of the charges, because you needed to split what your charge was and what the tax was. For some of them, the notification you got before you did the transaction would do the split. But when it came to reporting, it was putting it together. So they had to work on that, you know, and find ways around that. So mostly that was, and then the big challenge which we had anticipated was because we're going with a modified approach. So if you were on, say, Airtel Tigo, and then you were sending money to, say, ARP Apex Bank, I might be sending the money to myself, the Airtel Tigo money would know that that particular transaction is going to a particular account number. But they don't have visibility to know who it is going to. So it might be Kenneth Ashigbe to Kenneth Ashigbe, but they won't know that. So that particular transaction, if you've gone beyond your 100 CDs, allowable waiver, then it will be charged. But that should not have been done.
But Mr. Ashigbe, it's clear that there were lots of challenges at the initial stages that should have been resolved before this thing taken off. Did the EMIs make these concerns to GRA so that looking at the options, maybe let's even look at a week from now, or it appears that there was gun on your head? Let's go ahead.
No. I'm not too sure. So what we thought we knew that we could not do was the fact that we could not go with a common platform.
You make these concerns to GRA?
Yes. So that,
And did they tell you that because of the law, if you don't do it, this is going to happen to you?
So we've been experienced in this, in terms of dealing with taxes that come and then you having to recalibrate your systems and all of it. It's something that we do on a constant basis. And John will tell you, in this particular project, there's been a lot. So we have the technical committees that have been meeting on a regular basis. There's the communication committees that have been meeting. So the concerns had been made known. But anybody, any engineer, any project management person, and I wear both hats.
Dr. Engineer.
Exactly. That for even let me take a Joy FM. Those days when we climb the mountains and we go to Akwase, and so you're changing your antennas, you've done work, you will do it. By the time you go live, you've done all the tests and all of that, you will find out that there are issues that are involved and you need to tweak them. So if you look at the volume of transactions that have gone through and the percentages that we've had issues with, definitely this is a successful project.
But Mr. Shibe, this has to do with money.
Correct.
Money. And
but nobody's lost money yet.
No one?
No one has lost money.
Refunds?
So what's happened is that the issue of refunds had come. And you know that refunds and reversals are something that we as EMIs...
Some of the EMIs have started doing that.
Yes, refunds are happening. It's supposed to happen because one of the phased approach, the fact that when I send money to myself, the law says that that should be exempt. But currently, because of the phased approach, I don't have visibility on that other one. So the Commissioner General issued a directive that says that those would have to be refunded, and we'll have to deal with that till the 1st of July when we go live with the full one. The full blow.
Let me bring in that is Mr. Wah, Johnny Wah. He's the chief executive of the Ghana Association of Bankers. For some, they might argue that this is an EMI tax, and that was the main focus. Can you say that for the banks, well, the pressure hasn't been that bad on us?
It's even more pronounced at our end. We know as banks, we use multiple platforms for these virtual networks, those that operate on these digital channels. So it's not just implementing on your core banking application. There are banks that are using third-party systems for other services that are also scoped in for the purposes of the E-Levy. So in our environment, it was even...
And sorry, we're having a challenge with our internet connection. Okay, sorry. Mr. Wah, you can go ahead if you're back. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so what Ken talked about is a familiar situation that we all went through, but how the project had started, working together with GRA and the technical committee, it was going quite smoothly until, we had this U-turn, almost sudden U-turn. And if you ask me if the first approach that had been recommended earlier, sometime in February or March, if you had gone with that approach, perhaps the challenges we are having now may have been less pronounced. But having said that, if you look at the enormity of this implementation, I think the people who have worked on this deserve some pat on their backs. We are talking about all financial transactions happening on digital channels, going through one implementation and all going live on one day. So it tells you that it's not just the telcos working with GRA to implement a tax. It's not just the banks working with GRA. It is the banks, the telcos, the fintechs, and all these other players in the ecosystem, all acting in sync to ensure that the implementation is successful. To me, and knowing what I know now, I believe that, yes, as with any system implementation, implementation, you do your post-implementation review, and you find that there are few areas that you need to tighten. There are things that you thought maybe should have gone through, and maybe something, one or two things will drop. But all in all, I'm sure the parties to this implementation have done quite a good job.
Mr. Well, I mean, we've had the earlier explanation from the bankers about the fact that the pressure that we've seen in our banking house, if there's anything to go by in that situation on the ground, is normal, coming from about 4 days of holidays and all, end of month and all the rest. But when you also monitor comments on social media, some would try hard to appreciate or accept your argument that the pressure that we've seen in the banking halls and ATMs is because of the long holidays and is not because of this levy and people trying to move away from the electronic platforms to now doing the fiscal cash.
Yeah, I like to deal with facts. You need to work with data to come to a conclusion that a certain phenomenon is an outcome of some event. Given what we know and all the roaming work that we've done, touching base with the member banks and getting to the forefront, understanding exactly what the challenges are, what the banks were experiencing, footfalls that were quite unusual from the normal footfall. And given all that information, we come to the conclusion that that is not grounded, and it's, in my view, perhaps a very good reflection of three things coming together. We have this long holiday that coincided with a month end, and normally we know that workers get paid at month ends, and when people get paid, we get this kind of enhanced or increased footfalls in our banking facilities. And the third one is the E-Levy implementation, which also introduced some uncertainty in the environment. So all these three working in concert, of course, it is possible that there may have been some unusual occurrences. But if you have monitored quite closely, whenever we've had like a Christmas over a weekend which introduces extended holidays, we have ATMs that run off because you go and replenish with cash and then it's gone because people are in the festive mood. And when they're in festive mood, people spend. So let us not characterize that experience with this implementation that happened. Let's wait. Let's give ourselves some few days. The data is the name of the game. We will get the data, we will trend it, and we will know whether it is a normal trend or even for what happened, whether it even did happen. Personally, I have visited some banking premises today, and in my chat with the branch managers that I interacted with the bank officers that I interacted with, they've not seen any unusual occurrences in their banking premises. They are not seeing crowds that they are not familiar with or they haven't dealt with before. So it's very easy for sometimes people to throw things up in the air, and social media can go crazy with it. But the evidence on the ground does not support that.
Mr. Well, I know that you've been MD of several banks before getting here. For these things, this pressure, what is the lag time? So you're hoping that, George, for the next 5 days, then it would ease gradually. Come 2 weeks' time, if I so see this out there, that can be end of month, that can be weekend, that can be attributed to E-Levy.
Yeah, I mean, let's give ourselves, normally it is a few days to the end of the month, say 24th to the 30th of the month, and then 1 week after the month has ended, because people are still in the high liquidity mood. So I'm sure when we trend this period, and factor in the holidays as well, let's give ourselves some 1 week or two, we should be able to have a trend that we can compare with previous periods and establish whether it was an unusual spike, which perhaps was caused by something other than the normal seasonality.
So, well, I'll come back to you quickly on the lessons learned and going for what we need to do. But Dr. Kenashigbe, I mean, for what we've seen so far, some have argued that a more intensified education could have avoided it. Because I read some of the comments. I was paying money to someone, a person told me that because of the E-Levy, he has increased the price to take care of the cost. We have businesses who are saying that because of E-Levy, and I walked into a shop and the woman said that E-Levy means many narcos. Do you think that we could have avoided this?
So I think it was John that made this comment this evening, and I completely agree with him. You know that when the bill went to Parliament, we then, spent all our time, between the two political parties, arguing about the justification or not of it. So we did not even have a bill, we didn't know how the bill was going to look at the end. So we spent all our time on the justification rather than dealing with the education of the implementation. And then as, John also mentioned, at the last minute, there was at around about 10 about how it was going to go. So the technical people had not also finished the work that they were going to do. So almost close to, go live dates, you are still, finishing things like the issue of reversals, those notifications were coming. So definitely that took a bit of the time of all the education that we could actually have on the actual implementation. So I completely agree with you. And there is the need to really intensify the education that will have to go. The good thing is that John will tell you that we have a common platform currently now that exists between all the charging entities. GRA was leading the charge and we're working on the communication. So we definitely need to do the education. We definitely need to be able to explain to people what the actual impact of the levy is, what is exempted, what is not exempted, what can you do, what can't you do. People, so there's that misconception out there that we need to clear, that's education that is required. But there's also the tendency of some people wanting to game the system, and those ones too we also need to deal with. For a typical example of people who, when somebody's going to do a cash in, put money into his wallet. And we all know that cash ins, there's no charge even from the EMIs on that. And definitely there's no E-Levy on that. It's the same thing that's happening when somebody's going to do a cash out, but some of the people are attempting to do that. Another example also is a situation where somebody goes to buy fuel, he uses a card to make the purchases. And so the person says he was buying 400 cedis. It's not for you, the vendor, to add a tax to it before you key it in. You key it in if there's going to be a charge. Currently, all merchants are even exempt, but you find some of them adding all of those to that. So yes, we need to do a lot more. We need to step up on the education. And if we had done massive education like the way we did with redenomination of the city, definitely would have been better. But I think it's still not late.
It's early days yet, because we hear reports about some merchants saying that they are not getting any, people are not placing their funds again with them and all the rest. 3 days maybe, or 4 days. What are your member EMIs telling you in terms of transactions on the platform?
So the interesting thing is that the data, and I completely agree with John, that as a social scientist as well, there are several things that had come into a confluence, as John has said, and all of those factors are playing. So you are seeing, some movements, some go up, some are coming down before then and all of that. At this particular point, we're collecting the data, we're looking at the data. You want to study trends, you want to see how that is happening. So you find out that in places, yes, cash-ins might have gone up, some places it might have gone down, but you really need to study it and look at the volume so that when you see some, so that you actually can talk about the trend. If you're not too careful, what then you then do is that you actually are the person who, it then becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The thing might not be happening, but you're stepping on it and you're really going. So let's actually look, and the good thing is that this is the digital platform. The data is available. You actually will be able to analyze it, compare it on a week basis, you compare it on a monthly basis. You even want to look at an annual trend to see that in this particular time, how does that play? So as we speak, we all know that definitely when these things happen. So one of the factors definitely was the long holiday. It was the fact that he had started on a weekend. Normally weekends, there's a law, but then you also had introduced the whole issue of E-Levy into the fray. So all of that, but you need to be able to disaggregate it and say, which of them can you attribute to this particular tax that has come?
I was trying to get that because there have been lots of reports out there about people saying that. So just want to gauge or get a better picture that are all these things out there. People are not placing their funds. People are now doing pure cash transactions. Has that impacted on even what we have seen over the last 3 days? Or listen, in terms of volumes, in terms of movement, there's a different picture as from what we are seeing on the platforms.
So that's what I'm saying, that you see a particular picture being painted. But you see, the brush strokes...
Which is that transactions has dropped.
No, so I'm saying that you see different pictures being painted. That some of the days, a day before then, you see the trends in different form. But currently, the brush strokes are just beginning. So it's difficult to actually say that this is the trend that is happening. In some instances, you've seen the issues of cash-ins going up. In some other places, they've gone down. So you really would want to study what the trends actually are. And based on the data, and even if you listen to Joy FM, there's a report down on Joy FM. Within that report, there were people who were saying that they actually were doing it. And there were people who also said that no, it was not happening. So you need to balance all of that and then be able to look at it over a longer period before you actually can put a trend to it and say, this is what is happening, this is what... There's the fear that all of us have. You don't want that fear that people have, that perception of the fear, to actually be the one funding it. Let's look at the data. Let's look at actually what is happening. The transactions that are happening. Already the government had, there's been transfers that have been made to the government, of the levy that have been collected. They are...
Oh, already? So as you collect...
Yes, it's 2 days. After every 2 days.
Oh, so how much have you transferred in the past 2 days?
I don't have the data.
Not the actual numbers.
No, I don't have the data, but I know that the transfers have been done. After the first 2 days, you have 48 hours, you're supposed to transfer the money into the consolidated fund. And that's happened already.
I see.
Yes.
I thought you were holding on to it.
No. Government, so that's the decision, the directive by the Commissioner General is that after 48 hours, you transfer the money to the consolidated fund.
I mean, some good money has come in then.
Well, I know that transfers have happened. I don't have the data of how much, and I don't know what will be good, what will be bad yet. Bear in mind, the government has a target of about 4 billion. Yes.
By end of year.
Yes.
I see. But let me also get from you that, are you afraid or worried that this could impact on electronic transactions as well?
Oh, definitely.
With respect to what has happened, or some are saying that it was, they spoke about it, that there will be some attrition the first 2 or 3 months. So it's expected, or...
Definitely. If you look at all the data that's available, the literature that's available, where it happened, it's a particular fear we had. And it was the things that had gone into all our engagements with government. In our talking to government about the fact that we thought that the levels could be reduced, about the fact that merchant payments should be taken out, about the fact that other things should be done. It even was the reason why 2 of our members had to actually reduce their costs by a particular figure. And it's also one of the reasons that government itself introduced the 100 CDs waiver. All of that was saying that this thing, when it's done in other jurisdictions, this is the impact that is at heart. And is the reason why we have made ours very complex to implement, because of all the waivers that have been put in place. But bear in mind, another interesting thing that is happening these days, the waiver was supposed to be per person. But because of the phased approach that we have, if you have somebody that you have 2 different wallets, on different networks. Now you're not getting 100 CDs waiver now. You're getting actually a 200 CDs waiver per day. So all of those were because we knew that if you bring this tax, and like for every product that you have, where it's not an inelastic demand, where there are substitutes available, that is expected. But to what extent would that happen? And you also have to take into consideration some of the strategies that have been put in place by government, some of the strategies that have been put in by the charging entities to be able to mitigate that. Bear in mind that for John and his people, they have the luxury of getting a 20,000 CDs threshold that you need to do before the charge kicks in. All of that is supposed to be able to cushion people, and so we need to find out how all of those vehicles have worked. And I'm hoping that because this is a digital system, when the data come and is shared with the policymakers and all of that, we would have an agile way of applying this tax so that, what the unintended consequences do not crystallize.
I mean, I get your concern that these were issues you voiced, but some are saying that maybe it wasn't strong enough for the policymaker or the authority to review some things? Because at the end of the day, it comes back to hit you. You deal directly with the customers and the public.
No, so I think those points were really well made and were strongly pushed. You know, there were papers that we shared on them. You know, and the interesting thing is that for some of those papers, we had issued a paper in 2019 for the 2020 budget. When I picked it up, you know, it was almost as it was akin to this. So we really had made it, was shared information with it. And I think we need to credit government for some of this. Some of them were taken. One of our positions was about, you know, the quantum. You know, we thought that we should go in a penetrative pricing strategy. Well, it was not reduced as much as we thought, but that was done. The issue of merchant payments, for example, was one of the things that we really pushed, that, you know, that should be looked at. And, you know, completely that was waived. And so I think, you know, some of them have been taken, but you need to realize the fact that we come into this thing looking at it from another angle. The government also looks at it from other angles, including, you know, the fiscal deficit that they had and the need that they have. So, well, we're hoping that, you know, as, you know, the days go by, we'll be able to do, because you see, the overarching aim of government is to raise revenue. If you kill the goose that's laying the golden eggs, that revenue is also not going to come. So I'm pretty sure that hopefully there'll be, you know, government has been listening already. Hopefully they will listen a lot more, and we'll be able to ensure that, you know, we save our digital strategy that government has. We will save our whole financial inclusion push that we've done as a country.
So, going into this project that you were implementing, what was your biggest fear? And days into this implementation, has it gone or it is still there?
I would say the biggest fear was the fact that the enormity of the project was such that going one full-blown implementation on day one, of course, for any project management, you try to phase your approach. So where, you know, you are putting all these EMIs, all these fintechs, banks, and everybody, these we call charging entities, all together doing one single implementation and plugging into a network which, you know, for all intents and purposes, a GRA is also new, was a huge fear. And that is why right from the get-go, we made the point that given the fact that the tax is here to stay, why don't we make sure that the implementation happens in a more programmed way, so we don't rush to implement and create problems, you know, for the long term. I would say finally that is the situation that we had, and as Ken said, a lot of the things that we asked for, which you know, witnessed some fears that we observed initially, to some extent were, you know, mitigated by some engagement and some reprieves that were given. You know that the Act talks about from person to person bank transfer, there's a threshold, so we have to sit. And I'm talking about the engagement. I'm telling you, if there is any law that has passed in this country and is being implemented, that post-passage has received enormous engagement, it is this law. It was a daily encounter, daily. The project team were housed in a hotel, and it was daily. So it is not like, not for one.
So sorry to come in, Mr. Webben. Why are we then still experiencing some of these challenges? The charges and even.
I mean, it goes. No,
I'm sorry.
George.
Yeah.
The point is, in any implementation, I'm not sure you go through and everything is green. You finish, you do your post-implementation review, and you find that you have some yellow boxes here, you need to turn green. Even some may be red, you need to turn yellow and then to green. So for where we are, today is 5th. We went live first. And we are not really talking about massive problems, people saying I've been charged or I've not been charged. That is not what we are talking about. I think a lot of progress has been made, you know, with the implementation. The next step is what are we doing to correct the areas where, you know, we did not experience it as was designed. Then we take steps such as refunds, reversals, and the like. And refunds and reversals, were always part and parcel of this project. It's not like it is because of the implementation mode now that has introduced refunds and reversals. Again, if I had to cast my mind back, then I'll say the timing of the implementation is also critical. First, it came, nobody knew, maybe, it's very difficult to predict the holidays for the Eid. Very difficult. You need to cite the moon, and then, it's declared. So I'm sure if people knew that was going to introduce this long vacation or, 4 days, and it was going to be end of month, perhaps we would have said, can we give ourselves another 1 week to, move the implementation to that period, so that we do not complicate all the converging, events happening during implementation. But I mean, be it as it may, we are where we are, where I say in fact, I'm even surprised at the level. I don't know much about Ken's side
EMI.
on the EMI on the EMI side, but clearly I would say that for our member banks, they've done a lot. It's been a lot of work on them. 24/7 people working day and night, service providers. It's been a lot of work, and for them to have achieved the kind of level that we have now, yes, it's not 100%, but I think some good progress has been made.
And also, have you done any refunds from your end as the bank? So you haven't done that.
We will do this when we have the data. The data is what will tell us what the banks are doing. But when people are in the middle, they say you don't stand in the midst of ants and be plucking them from your skin. You understand? When you are in post-implementation mode, that is not when you go back to people, give me this, give me that data. You need to let people concentrate and fix the issues as they happen. Because this, what they are talking about, this is live. It's not, we are not in a testing environment. This is production, live. So what it means is we need to allow the technical people working in the banks, in the EMIs, to focus on the business of fixing the problems. Then we ask for the data. It's a digital channel. We can always go back, extract the data, analyze it, take decisions based on the outcome of that data, assess whether this is moving up, this is moving down, what is causing upwards, what is causing downwards. Those are things we can do from next week, if you ask me. This week is let's get it 100%, right. If there's a charge which is not supposed to be done and it's been done, how do we make sure the next person doesn't suffer it, and those who suffered, they have a recourse for refund? So these are some of the things. We need to be very careful, otherwise we will be in the middle of an implementation where, we are feeding the public with sometimes the sensational kind of storyline around long queues, around this. And before you realize, it is the sensationalism that is rather going to be the one to crystallize that occurrence. And then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You said it, and that's what I told you. But perhaps if we had taken our time and analyzed and assessed the data that will be presented to us, then we could take a decision based on facts. And I'm begging all the media houses using your channel here to beg them that let's exercise some restraint. People using social media, let's exercise some restraint. This is a huge implementation. As far as we are concerned, a lot of work has been done. It's been largely very successful. Yes, even common, simple implementation of, as he said, fixing a mast. Sometimes you go and you come and do your transmission, you have to tweak it here again, tweak it there. Before maybe sometimes over a 3-day period, you are better.
But Mr. Wu, I'll come back to, but some will say it has to do with money. And when it comes to money, it's something else. And you've been in this industry for a long time.
We've not
the
lost
charges
money.
And all those things. So on the moral argument, some may be right to get angry and mad as to how things are going.
So long as the information flow is fluent, I think we need, as Ken said, our platform of communicators, we need to be very active, and we need to change from implementing communication to education. So that we tell people about how if you are overcharged, what step do I need to take? I've seen a lot of messages from banks to their customers advising them, these are the steps. If you do this, do that. The normal, what we call the FAQs. We have them. The EMIs have them. But, not everyone is familiar with these things. We need to intensify in all languages, on all platforms, and make sure that it sinks in, because most of the issues that we are registering, a lot of it is noise, if you ask me, a lot of it. So then we filter the noise out of the real issues. Then we can then sit and solve the problems that we need to solve. And make sure that in another 1 week, you're not talking about people looking for refunds and not getting it.
Mr. Well, I'll go for a short break and I'll come back. I want to get your thoughts also in managing the situation when it comes to liquidity issues and all the rest, so that also doesn't generate to something else for us. This is PM Express Business Edition. I'm engaging the Dr. Engineer Ken Ashigbe and also Mr. John Ewa, Chief Executive of the Ghana Association of Bankers, as we talk about the E-Levy and the implementation challenges. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to PM Express Business Edition, as you talk about the E-Levy and the challenges or the issues that are arising, and getting it from the perspective of those institutions on the ground, the EMIs and the commercial banks that are actually helping the Ghana Revenue Authority to collect this levy. So, Mr. Shigbe, I'm just trying to get something from you that we understand that there have been some refunds that are going on as we speak right now. When did that actually?
So I think the refund should have started like a day after, the day after we went live. And, but as John said, refunds, reversals are something that constantly, get done. And so it's not new. One of the things that if it's an on-net transaction, for example, at the end of day, when they run all the reports of all the charges that have been done, and they find some refunds that are, have not, there some charges that have not gone the way they ought to do, automatically those refunds.
So the refunds are going to be done, are being done on a daily basis?
Yes, once you see, so that the ones that happen on net, where the EMI has complete visibility.
That will be done in the same day.
Exactly. At the end of the day, once you run the report and you see that those ones can be done immediately. The challenges will be the ones that have happened off net. So the person has to request for it and then be able to provide evidence that the ID on the account on the other side is I am the same person, provide a transaction code, and that those checks would have to be done. Those are the ones that would take some days. But that SLAs that handle this thing up to 72 hours and all of that. Okay. So all of that is going on, and it's not something new to the EMIs. I don't know about the banks, but it's something that happens. People would send a transaction and they will call you and say this transaction was a wrongful transaction. So for that one, you need to reverse all of that, but you need to be sure, because there are situations where somebody will go and buy something from a merchant, actually made a purchase. And then the person will come back to you and say, I transferred it to the wrong person. So you actually need to ensure that you've done the checks. So all of these are the things that, delay the process a bit. And currently with the off-net one, it has to be manually done because you can see that. But I'm sure once the common platform comes, that would be done also seamlessly. I think in all of this as well, we should bear in mind that the situation where you have the same person having to transfer money to his other wallet, it's not something that is... On-net transaction is the majority of the transaction. And the ones that go off-net as well, the ones that go to the same person, is also not large. So there is some people that it would be happening to. And that for anybody, once that happens, people will complain. Today, one of, my colleagues I used to work with at Graphic, sent me, some money that he had sent. He had sent 101 CDs. And she had been charged, there was a tax on it. And, so I computed it for her and I showed her that the tax was the 1.5% on the one CD. They had taken the 100 CDs out and I charged her, multiplied that by 0.75% because it was an MTN transaction. And then the one CD had been charged, which tells you that the system is actually working. Even for one CD, it's able to take the 100 CDs off and make that particular
From
charge.
The communication that you have with the members and the platforms and GRA and all the rest, when are you hoping that all other things being equal, some of these technical and other challenges will be over so that after this period, some of these things, wrongful deductions, overcharging and all those things?
But John, I think generally, George, the overcharging conversations are almost gone. Okay. Most of them are being dealt with. Yeah. The things that currently that still would exist with us for a while is when I send money to myself. I think the most important thing is also a lot of the complaints that are coming out now is the fact that people still need a lot of education. That's why I agree with John where he says that we have to move a step gear higher on just implementation, education, actually now to taking particular issues and being able to deal with them. So we
case studies,
exactly, use cases of particular things that are happening, and then go into those places. So we need to be combining the above the line form of communication, like the education we're doing here today, to below the line. So a lot more of the videos that deal with particular things in various languages. A lot more of the scenarios. So our A-boards that sit with the agents and all of that should actually be calibrated using particular cases that are happening. A lot more education about what is exempt, what is not exempt. A lot more education about what you can expect, when you're using these particular channels. So that's what we need to aggressively do, and be able to, distill off, the real challenges that are still there and you see people are still sharing some of the posts people are sharing. They are sharing maybe something that has happened in the past, not looking at what is happening today. So from the data I see, you're seeing that most of the issues that go against the customer have been dealt with. The ones that currently, we're still dealing with are the ones that goes against either it's resulting in undercharging. And I'm sure, if you know a few people, they would have told you. Those ones, it's taking a bit of time to be able to do. And we should bear in mind that if you take examples of merchant payment, for example, the law says specified merchants. So what GRA has done, because all the merchants have not gone through all the processes to be registered with GRA had given some time that says that at the point of going live, all of these merchants let them be exempted. But then they've given them a particular window for which they are supposed to register with GRA and come back to the EMIs, the fintechs with their tax clearance certificate for them now to be specified. So all of those things.
So by June ending or July ending, we're hoping that
by 1st of July, when we are all integrated with a common platform, then everything would really be seamless. And this issue about not knowing who you're sending the money to, and if it's the same person, that will be dealt with. Even with that, if you have, in situations where there's a bilateral between an EMI and a bank, where, so if you take me, for example, my ABSA account, my mobile money number is also been added. So when I want to send money, the app would ask me whether it's to self. So when that happens, then that issue of being charged for that transfer completely is non-existent.
Let me quickly get Mr. Johnny Westcott and let him wrap up with him. Mr. What for you? I mean, there are some who also say that with respect to this sudden pressure, with the bank assures that liquidity is not a problem, and it has never been a problem. So those who would want to test the system, that also doesn't fuel any rumors around about your position to deal with the demands.
Yeah, I'm sure whoever has walked into a bank or made a request for a transfer, within this window has been served. Liquidity is the liver of banks, and therefore we don't joke with it. So where we see potential shortfall along the line, steps are quickly taken to ensure that banks are able to plug it. And the good thing is, a bank's liquidity assessment is over a period. It's not just in a day. In a day, you can even run short and then make sure that you are able to cover, in the subsequent days. So, to the extent that we have not seen this reflecting in massive, as was reported by some media outlets, we haven't seen that. So I think we should leave it there, and then when the data becomes available, we can then properly assess. Of course, with since 1st April, the Bank of Ghana's cash reserve, the new cash reserve requirement kicked in. So there's a little bit of liquidity squeeze in the environment already. I mean, if you are moving from 8% to 12% of cash reserve ratio, you know that there's already a little bit of squeeze in the environment. So if this is to introduce any layer or additional layer of liquidity squeeze, then the banks will have to quickly do what they do best to cover those positions. But as it is now, it is never a problem for the industry, because we have not seen in banking facilities people making undue demands. You have not seen like cash in transit vans blowing, their alarms on the streets because they are moving cash from one point to the other. Things are moving as normal. As I was sitting here, I was getting text messages from some of the banks saying that we are operating normal. There is no kind of variation between what we are seeing now and what we used to see. There will definitely be instances where shortfall there, as was said before, but it's not, should I say, a prevailing something that is running across the entire infrastructure. We should just give ourselves some time.
So what your final thoughts in a minute in terms of this has come to stay, some will say, but how do you also ensure that cashless transactions and the whole financial intermediation is not or are not disrupted?
Yeah, so as banks, we have our work cut out for us. Education. Make sure implementation is such that the customer pain points are reduced. So that is the hallmark of every implementation program. So we want to create the indulgence of our customers that they should go on and do their banking the way they've been doing it. There's no fear if it is a person-to-person bank transfer. There is a threshold. If the amount you are transferring is within 20,000, there is no E-Levy on it. The E-Levy is only on the amount above the 20,000 threshold. This is the kind of education that will continue to hammer and make sure that everyone who banks with any of our members understands exactly the kind of potential charges they may or may not experience. But all in all, our priority is to make sure the customer experience is not one of frustration, but one of seamless transition from day to day.
Let me come to Mr. Shigbe. I mean, a minute as you wrap up
so
for you.
I think I just speak the same language that John speaks. The focus is on the customer experience. The focus is to ensure that the customer is able to do the things that they are able to do. And I also would urge everybody that go ahead, do your mobile money business like the way you have done it. We all know what the exemptions are, up to 100 CDs. There's no levy on it. And the thing that we need to do is to really intensify all the education, make sure that people know exactly what they ought to do. Then the other bit also is that working towards ensuring that by 1st of July we would have been able to seamlessly connect to that common platform. We need to continue education, and the appeal that was made by John also to all the media houses that we should decipher between the sensationalism and actually what is actually happening, and be able to get to the meat of the issues that are happening, and all be able to support us do this. Where we've gotten to with our digital strategy, our financial inclusion, we cannot reverse it.
Mr. Dr. Engineer Kenneth Shigbe, I appreciate your time. And Mr. John Ewua, thanks a billion. I know why I've stayed through the whole program. I appreciate so much. It has been the E-Levy, challenges, implementation, and the way forward as I engage these two critical players in the EMI industry, Dr. Kenneth Shigbe and also Mr. John Ewua, Chief Executive of the Ghana Association of Bankers. My name is George Jaffe. I know the debate was still going in your homes about the E-Levy and what we should be doing about it. Have a great day.